bit of a different setting. That's why it took me so long to come back to making videos. But I've actually quite a busy couple of days. I've got a couple of smartphones and a smartwatch that I wanted to show you guys. So subscribe to see all of that. But for now, yo, wait till my guys, it's BigRIZz. And okay, if I told you that Sony is still making smartphones, would you have known that? Okay, if I told you that Sony actually no longer makes Sony Ericsson phones and just makes Sony phones, would you know that? But yeah, this is a phone that I've been really excited for the better half of a year, and that's this, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III. And I've had this phone for about a month now, it's almost exactly a month now, and this is actually by far the greatest smartphone out right now. But, and that's the thing, on paper, this thing is actually either on par or actually surpasses its competition in all of its different like brackets of specification. But for every single thing that's good about this phone, what's great about this phone has a but, that little caveat that stops this from becoming either crowned the greatest smartphone or just a popular smartphone in general, because I can't name a single person that I haven't spoken to about this that would even know that this phone even existed. When I first found out about this smartphone, the first thing that came to mind, this is sort of like a Sony hybrid phone, and what I mean by is every single specification comes from one of the many things that Sony makes when it comes to like TV technology or camera technology or audio technology. They sort of incorporated everything that they do well into a really polished, really amazing smartphone. So let's start with the first one. 4K HDR OLED display running at 120 Hz. Yeah, 4K. To put that into perspective, that's a 643 pixels per inch display, and the iPhone is 458 pixels per inch. So this is well over what you would get with the average smartphone. This is actually the first smartphone to have a 4K 120 Hz display. The display itself is 6.5 inches and it has an uninterrupted screen. And what that means is there's no cutout, there's no notch. It's just screen to screen. There's nothing else that can interrupt you when you're watching movies or playing games. There is a bit of a chin, a bit of a forehead, but it's so small that for most people it probably wouldn't even make a difference. It does have a 21:9 cinema wide aspect ratio, and most movies are actually filmed in 21:9. So when you're watching a movie on Disney Plus or Netflix, you're not going to get those weird thick bars that you're going to get on any other smartphone. You're going to get a completely screen to screen experience without any interruptions. And for a little bit of an added bonus, by having a 21:9 inch aspect ratio phone, this is the most comfortable phone that I've held in my hand so far. Whether I'm taking a phone call or just using it with one hand, there really is no discomfort. It has rounded off edges, it's super thin, it's super light. This is the most comfortable phone I've ever held. I'm going to say it again because I think more and more phones need to incorporate this. It's such an underrated thing. So yeah, 4K HDR OLED 120 Hz, the highest pixels per inch of any display, and really comfortable with the whole. So this has to be the best display on a smartphone, right? But, and the big one is, nothing is really in 4K. The only app I can think of that actually supports 4K on Android is YouTube, but Netflix doesn't support it, Disney Plus doesn't support it. I'm pretty sure when you're navigating through the menus or reading text on the screen, it is super sharp, but at this sort of screen size, at this sort of range away from the face, can you even notice a difference? I've given it to a few people and I've been told it doesn't actually look, okay, it looks great, but it doesn't look that much better than an iPhone or a Samsung, which is 1080p to 1440p. And by having a 4K display, what's going to end up happening is, because the pixels are so tiny, you're not going to get as bright of a screen as a 1440p or even a 1080p smartphone. And my favorite thing about the display of this phone, the aspect ratio, again, not everything is fully optimized for this content, and because YouTube is for the most part 4:3, like this video is gonna be in, or maybe 16:9. You're still gonna have even much thicker black bars when you're watching anything other than a movie. Now, YouTube supports 4K, but most of the content is in 4:3 or 16:9. Or you can watch Netflix or Disney Plus, which won't support 4K but will be in 21:9. You don't actually get both, and that sucks. Another big gripe is that the 120Hz on the display is not adaptive at all. It's either at 120Hz all the time, or you can manually switch it down to 60Hz all the time. But much like how Samsung's been doing it for years, and how Apple's now doing it with the iPhone 13 Pro, you're not going to get an adaptive refresh rate, which means that even in an always on display or a still image like this, it's still refreshing at 120Hz, and that is going to have a massive effect on the battery. But other than that, I still think it's a pretty decent display. But let's go into the next part, which is probably my favorite thing that Sony does, which is I've already made videos about 2 Sony audio products. I first made my first BigRIZz review with the Pulse 3D headsets, which is for the PlayStation, but I also made a little unboxing video of the WF-1000 XM4s, and I'm also a big fan of these. These are the WH-1000 XM3s, so I'm a big fan when it comes to Sony audio products, and this is actually no exception. Sony has the best wireless headphones on the market right now, but they still decided to add a headphone jack into their phone. It barely looks like it can even fit on the phone, but they added a headphone jack on it, and it supports LDAC and Hi-Fi. The phone also supports front-facing stereo speakers, which again is something that you just don't see very often. One of my favorite phones of all time was the HTC One M8, and one of the reasons why I really liked that phone was for the front-facing speakers, and as well as having LDAC and hi-fi support or high-res support in the headphone jack. This also supports Dolby Atmos from the front-facing speakers, and also 3D audio. Both of those things have to be done through Tidal, which you do get a 3-month subscription for free if you buy this phone, but it's one of those things where like you really have to buy another service to really experience it. And I'm not gonna lie to you, the Dolby Atmos and the 3D reality sound is really cool on the songs that it does work on. But aside from that, I'm not an audiophile. I don't notice a big difference between high-res audio and regular audio. I'm just not tuned enough to hear this stuff. But for the audiophiles, I'm pretty sure you could probably hear a difference. The 3D audio actually does work through the front-facing speakers, which this is the only phone to do that. I was a little bit skeptical because with headphones it's easier because you can have audio coming from the back, from the front, because of all the different sound drivers. This is just one pair of speakers just firing at you, but it does do a very good job at having the sound feel surround bars. Even when you just have the phone in front of you just listening to music, but you have to listen to it this way, which not a lot of people will do, but if you want to get the full experience, that is how you do it. As well as high-res, it also supports high-res wireless through Bluetooth headphones. Again, if you're pairing up with one of the Sony headphones, you should have no issues. It also supports DSEE, which is some sort of like AI enhancer that makes music sound better from adjusting the frequencies and blah 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 blah. It sounds nice. It also has this really cool feature where it uses the haptic drivers inside to vibrate the phone in tune with the music to give you a more of an immersive experience. I found it a little bit jarring on the music side, but where I really enjoyed it was when I was playing Minecraft, because as you walk on different surfaces and different textures, you do get a different level of vibration, and I found that to be really immersive and actually a really interesting use of using a haptic motor, something that you don't really experience if you have a DualSense 5 controller for the PS5. So yeah, Dolby Atmos front firing stereo speakers, a LDAC and high-res headphone jack, and support for any sort of high-res wireless connectivity. So this has to be, at least for audiophiles, probably one of the better smartphones for audio, right? But nothing. Like literally nothing. This sounds amazing. This is actually one of the only sides that doesn't have a negative to it. It's just my ears can't hear the difference between high res and like Spotify. I'm just not in tune to it. But yeah, now for something that I was never a big fan of until I started doing YouTube. But let's talk about the. Hey, did you know that Sony actually make the camera sensors of your smartphone? Whether it's an iPhone or a Samsung, OnePlus, or even a Google Pixel, Sony's actually the ones making the sensors that actually capture the images of your smartphone. So these ones will have to be good, right? Because like the iPhone picture is so amazing, so is the Samsung, and we all know the Google Pixel actually produces some of the best pictures on a smartphone. So how does Sony make a camera on their own smartphone? And the answer to that is different because this camera department was actually co-developed by the team behind the Sony A9 mirrorless camera, which is like a £4,000 professional camera, and blah 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 blah. It's a really good camera made for professionals and whatnot, and you can kind of see it when you load up the camera app on this phone. First thing to note though, this thing actually has a two-stage shutter key, which can allow you to just straight away go into the camera app. And once you go beyond the basic mode, you'll notice that the entire interface has changed to look like a more professional camera, or at least a Sony mirrorless camera. And the intention here is to give the user more choice in their photos. It switches from auto mode to program auto mode to shutter speed priority and manual exposure, which is what most professionals would probably use. You half press to focus in, and then you press all the way to take a picture. And it sounds very similar to the way the Sony mirrorless cameras would take when you're taking a picture. And something that's very familiar to professional photographers that use Sony cameras is that if you have a subject in your range and you half press on the shutter button, you'll notice that you'll see green focus points, and the green focus points will actually follow the subject as it moves around in the frame. And the phone does a really good job at keeping a subject in motion, in focus, as it's moving around the frame, so that when you do take a picture, it's still really high quality and the subject is in frame and in focus, and it's just a really nice picture. Okay, so genuine professional camera developers co-developing the camera system on this smartphone from the company that actually develops the sensors for most smartphones, and you get full control over your pictures to get the sort of image that you'd like. So these should be the best cameras on your smartphone right now. But in order to get a picture that is on par with a Samsung or an iPhone or even a Google Pixel, you're gonna need to know how to use a camera. I'm not a professional photographer. Most of my friends are not professional photographers. I don't know many professional photographers. So I'm gonna go out on a whim and say most people that buy a smartphone aren't professional photographers. And if you are a professional photographer and you care about the manual exposure, the ISO, the shutter speed of your camera, and you don't want the whole point and shoot experience that you would get from an iPhone, a Samsung, or Google Pixel, you would most likely have a camera, right? What if you just want to take a normal picture? Now, you can still do that, but the pictures don't come out as good as, or even close to as good as, what you would get from an iPhone, a Samsung, or a Google Pixel. And that's mainly in the color department. In terms of sharpness, in terms of quality, in terms of edge detection, I think it actually is one of the best in the series. Close to the iPhone, very close to the Samsung. But I find the colors to be a bit muted. If you look at this picture, you'll notice that the subject in frame, which is my friend, he looks very muted. Just by adjusting the white balance to be just a touch warmer, you'll notice that the picture looks infinitely better. But if you don't know how to use a camera, you don't know what white balance is, you're not going to know this, and you're going to forever take pictures of a muted subject that's very neutral colored and doesn't look as bright and as colorful as you would get from any of the competition. And that's just the photo mode. There is a whole other app specifically for taking high quality video, the Cinema Pro app, and even I myself found it very overwhelming, and it was very complicated as to how this thing sort of works in a sense. Another really big letdown was the selfie camera. Now, I don't really take many selfies on my phone, but when I do kind of want it to be, you know, looking good. Now, Samsung selfie cameras are really good. iPhone selfie cameras are really good. This is a 8 megapixel camera that can only record at a maximum of 1080p at 30. 1080p at 30 on a £1,200 smartphone. Any Samsung smartphone can go 4K 60 from the selfie camera. They do have this really cool mode that I'm going to call the anime mode that allows you to blur the background, make your skin a lot smoother, increase the size of your eyes, and slim out your jaw, so you get this really alien looking picture. It looks really cool. It looks kind of funny, but it's not something that I would ever use. It's just kind of cool that there's sort of like an anime mode from a Japanese smartphone. So it's the one good thing that comes out of this selfie camera. What's that other thing that Sony make? Oh yeah, the PlayStation. As this came from the creators of the PlayStation, I am actually impressed at the small little things that Sony have put into this phone to make it a pretty decent gaming device, even though it's not marketed as a gaming phone. I mean, look at it. And just to get the numbers out of the way, as we mentioned before, it has a 120 hertz display, as well as a 240 hertz motion blur reduction rate, as well as a 240 hertz touch sample rate. So this is pretty much on par or even greater than the average smartphone. But these benefits are going to actually help in making this phone a very adequate gaming machine. And this is all backed up by the Game Enhancer. The Game Enhancer is a folder that just sits on your phone that holds all your games for you, as well as all of the enhancement settings. There is a pull down menu that allows you to adjust the refresh rate, the touch response rate, as well as the touch tracking. There is also a feature that allows you to release the RAM, turn off adaptive brightness, hide your notifications, have a H.S power control, which means when you do plug in the USB-C power adapter, it's just bypassing power from the wall outlet straight into the power supply of the phone. It's not using up any of the battery if you are going to be gaming for long periods of time, which actually will help with battery life over time. It also allows you to fully tweak the game's audio equalizer if you want more higher on the lower spectrum, if you want to hear footsteps, or if you prefer to hear the highs a lot better. This is something that's very common when you start up Call of Duty for the first time. They'll let you decide between a bunch of presets of audio, but this actually lets you adjust it to the frequency, and I think that's actually really cool if you take mobile gaming this seriously, but it is there. The game also allows you to record your gameplay and also have it be accompanied by a face cam. Now, because the screen is so wide, the camera is so far off this way that it looks kind of unfocused as I'm looking at the screen, because I'm looking this way, whereas the camera's here. Now, also because it's on the bottom left, as I go into touch for the controls, see me. So I can turn it the other way around, and it kind of makes the angle even worse. Like, I could bring it out slightly, but this is just uncomfortable. If I was just to hold the phone normally, I don't think I'm covering any of the microphones. But yeah, it just looks really like unfocused. It's all this way. Now, this is only the fault of the camera webcam being so small and the screen being so wide, which is actually a plus for the gaming side, but it's not a plus for the recording side. So, I mean, if I do that, then it's just, again, it's just uncomfortable. I'm looking so far off this way. It's not much we can do here. If you do need to respond to an application really quickly, or maybe even look up a YouTube video or go onto a web page, you do get the option of opening the multitasking setting. And this was really helpful if I got stuck on something or want to find out something. I could just quickly go into an application, find out what it is, and just close the app, so that way it's not too distracting. I found this to be really cool. I only did it once to find out some ingredients on like a Minecraft thing. But again, if you take mobile gaming seriously, this is actually really cool. Okay, so considering it's not a gaming phone, Sony seem to have made a pretty decent gaming experience on their smartphone. So, just as a regular phone, it should be the best phone for gaming, right? You see where I'm going with this? There's a but. The main but to this is that it's such a high spec device with such a high spec chip and a high spec screen, but it's not really accompanied by some of the cooling aspects that most gaming phones or even some of the Samsung phones have with their devices, and that makes this phone get really warm and almost to a concerning amount. And this is very noticeable when you have the phone plugged in and you're gaming at the same time. You'll notice that the back of the phone will start to get a lot warmer, and I didn't play so much to the point where it started throttling again a lot more slower. um it is something to be wary of if you're playing for long periods of time, but I personally didn't get a lot of issues with it. And also with the face cam thingy with the recording, this is only to then edit into an editing software and upload to, choose video streaming service of your choice. It's most likely going to be YouTube, right? What I would have liked to have seen was a streaming service, because I can only think of one other phone that does do this, and this is the Lenovo Legion phone, where you can actually Twitch stream your gaming content straight into your stream essentially, and it gives you the option to have face cam. And I mean, to be fair, I don't know much about it, but I thought that was really cool, and it would have been nice to have seen more integrated software built in that you could pair with your PlayStation. Sort of like with xCloud. It would have been nice if you could have streamed games from PlayStation Now using a DualShock controller and play games while you're on the fly on data, because this phone does support 5G, so it should be more than capable of streaming a 720p PS3 game while you're out and about. Something that is also kind of like, it's no other phone has it, but if one phone was gonna have it, it should have been this one. There's no native DualSense support. So you can connect a DualSense controller just like you can connect a DualShock 4 controller, and you can use that to play your games like Call of Duty Mobile or whatever. But when you are playing Remote Play on the PlayStation Remote Play app and you're streaming content from your PlayStation to your phone to play remotely, it would have been nice to have had haptic support or adaptive triggers in the phone. Something to make this phone unique. You make the most popular games console in the world. Incorporate it into your smartphone. It would make it more desirable, in my opinion. Maybe for next time. I think it would have been nice if you made this phone very unique if you have a PlayStation, which most people do. There is actually one more type of device that Sony makes. They've been making these regularly for the last 20-ish years, and it's probably the most overlooked and sometimes one of the most underappreciated devices that they do make. And that is... Alright, so we spoke about the amazing screen, we spoke about the audio technology, the camera technology, and the gaming department. All of them are actually really good on paper, some of the best on paper, if you take out some of those caveats. But all of that doesn't really matter if this isn't a great smartphone. So this has been in my pocket, this had my SIM card inside, and I've used nothing else except this for the last week and a half. And I was pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised. In terms of software, it's basically just stock Android, but it does have a few Sony tools and customization options that I actually really enjoyed. The first one is the multitasking. Now, because it's a 21:9 aspect ratio, it's really tall, really slender. And what that allows you to do is have a really good split screen experience. Now, not only do you get more room for each app to sit on your screen when you're in split screen mode, you also get this multi-window button, which will allow you to replace apps individually from each other and place them where exactly you want. I found this feature to be really useful because usually when you're doing split screen on a phone, you can only really change the bottom app, but this one you can individually change both of them. If there is a pair of apps that you usually use quite commonly, for example, let's say YouTube and Chrome, it does save into your sidesense menu. And the sidesense bar is probably my favorite thing about the software on the smartphone. It's fully customizable. You can adjust the size, transparency, and the position of the screen. To access sidesense is super simple. Just double tap on the sidesense bar and it'll show you 8 apps. Now these 8 apps you can either choose yourself to be there permanently, or you can have AI choose which apps they think you might use based on your habits and how frequently you use these applications. If you want to choose another app, you can open up your entire app drawer in picture and then swipe and find the right one if it's not there. There's also customizable gesture controls, so you can choose to either swipe up or down to activate something different. For me, swiping up would activate the split screen mode, and then swiping down would activate either the one-handed mode or just pulling down the notification drawer. Because of how tall the display is, I thought that was very helpful in getting my notifications out in a pinch, regardless of what app I'm in. If you do have one of Sony's headphones, I mean, like, why wouldn't you? You can choose to have that in your sidesense menu, and that will allow you to quickly change between your different EQs, as well as just open the app and then you can adjust your level of noise cancellation and ambient noise. And it's a really cool shortcut to get right into the application, but also it acts as like a widget if you want to just quickly change between EQs. On the left of the menu, you'll see a very tall like rectangle as well as a smaller square. If you do press the smaller square, you can choose for whichever app you open to open in a pop-up menu, and that way you're not confused with whether or not you're opening an app in big or in small. You can choose to have 2 apps open in split screen with a third open as a pop-up. The always on display on this phone is actually really nice as well. When you are listening to music, you get the album cover or the single cover as a sort of like the sticker for your always on display, and it is really nice when you're lifting up. It's a full, like, really high quality like very dark image of the album cover. And like with all always on displays, it does show you which notifications you have pending. If your phone does receive a notification, the actual icon that is for will pulsate, letting you know that this is the latest notification. The battery is okay. Having a 4K 120Hz smartphone is very battery taxing. If you are someone that uses their phone away from a plug for the majority of the day, maybe even the whole day, I would stay clear of this because this is a battery eater. But Sony does do a few things to keep the longevity of the battery healthy throughout its years. So it has this battery care mode that will charge your phone up to 90% until one of the factors you can change. One of them is you can set a time for when you wake up, so then when you wake up it'll get to 100% at that time. You can also let AI control it, so when you plug your phone in, it'll sort of guess when it thinks you're going to wake up or when you're going to use the phone again, and it'll charge up to 100% before you unplug the phone. But you can also have it so it can't physically charge higher than 80 to 90%, even no matter how long you leave the charge in for. Again, this is really good for keeping the batteries healthy for the long term. So if you're going to have this phone for over 2 years, let's say even 3 to 4 years, Sony have put that into consideration with keeping their batteries healthy. But aside from that, there were a few like really handy tools and exclusive-ish features that I found to be just really useful on this device. The first of those being the custom Google Assistant button on the side, right below the power button. And I found this really useful because I was able to access the Google Assistant without worrying about a trigger phase or a gesture. It's just a simple button that you can just press, say what you want, and it does what I want it to. In fact, turn on the light in my room. Sure. Turning on Ria's bulb. The other thing that you really don't see in smartphones anymore is having a SIM card tray that doubles as a SD card tray, but you don't actually need a tool to take it out. It just literally just stick your finger in there and you can pull it out, and you can either have 2 SIM cards or 1 SIM card and an SD card up to 1 TB. And that's a £200 upgrade to turn this phone from a 256 GB phone to a 1.256 TB phone. Compare that to iPhone's £400 upgrade to go from 256 to 1 TB. you can do this for half the price. So, also, if you are a photographer and you do want to use your phone for professional or hobbyist photography, the ability to take out the SD card and swap it out without needing a tool is something that I can imagine to be very useful. Another thing that you don't see in smartphones a lot is a mini LED notification light, and it's something that we used to see in a lot of the BlackBerries and the old Samsungs. Sony kept it on the phone because it doesn't have the exact edge-to-edge display. There is a little bit of forehead, and it allows you to keep the front-facing speakers as well as the notification LED. And it goes red, and it gradually turns to green as you're charging it. It will go blue for Twitter, green for WhatsApp. Having the fingerprint reader as the power button. The power button is the fingerprint reader and vice versa. If all companies did this, you wouldn't actually need such a thick notch for Face ID or to have to worry so much about where an under display fingerprint reader or anything. Just put it on the side. It's a dinosaur technology but is so quick and so efficient that you don't really need to go any further beyond this. This is as good as it needs to get. And I know this is not so much of a flex, but again, for a phone that costs about the same price as an iPhone or an S21 Ultra, it's something that you do have to appreciate that they did put into this phone, and that is a 30-watt USB-C charging brick in the box for free. Also, as well as having wireless charging, you also get the option of reverse wireless charging. So if you have a pair of Sony earphones or maybe a smartwatch, you are able to place the device on top of your phone to wirelessly charge and siphon the energy from your battery into the headphones or the accessory of your choosing. You can also charge another phone if you wanted to. Okay, so let's go through what we went through so far. So we've got some of the best multitasking you can get on a smartphone right now. We've got a really functional always on display that works smart and very battery conscious. We've got battery saving and battery care functionality that allows you to keep your battery running for long term. And we really have some throwback features that we kind of took for granted not that long ago, but it's stuff that I personally miss. And I'm pretty sure most people miss, but they're just not willing to admit that having a headphone jack on a phone is still really useful. Having SD card expansion on a phone is still really useful. And also, okay, maybe the LED notification is not as useful as an always on display, but it is still nice to have. Oh, let's not mention the fact that it comes with a charger in the box. So this has to be maybe not the best, but probably one of the best smartphones out right now. Right? But, and there's not a lot, but it's just a few small things that I really wish they kind of added to the, let's say, the spit polish of this phone. And it also kind of begs the question, and this is what I think, why this phone is either so unknown and is so unpopular and is going to be very unsuccessful, in my opinion. Because, like I said in the start of the video, did you even know Sony still makes smartphones? Did you know that this smartphone even dropped in the end of August? Did you know that this phone was announced in April? I didn't. I only found out this phone was coming out in July. And this phone was announced in April, and I'm a big Sony fanboy. What Apple or Samsung will do is they will have their announcement, have the pre-orders come out either on the day or that Friday, and have it be available to pick up in stores literally the next week or 2 weeks later. This phone was announced in April, and what happened was there was no price, no release date for any country, and then at least in the UK, we didn't get a price tag until about 2 weeks before the release date, which we didn't know that release date was coming. We just saw the price tag. It didn't have a release date. Even when you clicked on where to buy or when to buy, it just said subscribe to our newsletter on email and we'll let you know when this device comes out. Well, great. Gee, thanks, Sony. And then 2 to 3 weeks later, it just dropped on Amazon, dropped on the Sony website, dropped on wherever it is that you can buy a smartphone. If you don't have people like me who are enthusiastic about your products, no matter how poorly you do the marketing or how poorly you engage with your customers, which again, I'm a very niche person in that regard, you're going to have a bunch of people, the majority of the population, not knowing that this really amazing phone exists. And the main reason
And one of the main reasons why I'm really annoyed about this smartphone. I am a big fan of the technology that this company makes. I believe they make the best TVs. They clearly make the best games console. They clearly make some of the best cameras. But they don't care that you bought all of these things. And it is something that I think Sony need to incorporate into their devices, because at the moment you're giving me no excuse, you're giving me no reason to buy all of your products other than the fact that you make some of the best products. But the main part, the part that is the foundation of a good ecosystem, this is the thing that's kind of lacking out of everything else. And Sony make everything from TVs to headphones to the most popular like games console in the world to cameras that I'm recording this on right now. You make a lot of things, but they don't have the same synergy, or they don't run under the same ecosystem that Apple and Samsung have perfected over the years. A solid ecosystem rewards the customer, lets them know that yes, they are being appreciated for buying all of your products. It's something that Samsung and Apple have perfected over the years. And considering that you make more products than Apple do, you make cameras, you make TVs, you make games consoles, all things that Apple don't create, you can sort of have that one step up. Like, yes, okay, everyone has a TV, everyone has a smartphone, everyone has headphones, everyone has a PlayStation. What if it just worked all together if you bought our smartphone? That would be enough incentive. But anyway, that was my review of the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III. This was my first phone review, and this was a phone that I've really wanted for, I'm going to say a year, but it was announced in April. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's BigRIZz, and yeah, see you guys on the next review. Safe.